Hello and welcome to a very special spooky season episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. I am your host, Steve the Cat. It's 1 week until Halloween, and tonight we're going to get you into the spirit by talking about a couple of films from my favorite horror film franchise. If you were with us last year, you know that during October we talked about the 1978 original film Halloween, and Halloween 2, and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and also Halloween 2018. Well, tonight we're going to continue that trend with a discussion of Halloween 4 and Halloween 5. And also, for those of you who are new to the Halloween franchise, or for those of you who are just confused, we're going to take a quick walk through all of the Halloween films to give you an understanding of the various continuity timelines. Gwen, Fancy, and Professor Fluffosaurus have the night off tonight, so we're just going to get straight into things. Thank you so much for spending part of your spooky season with us. We're really glad that you're here. Now grab your drink and your popcorn and strap in, because here we go. Good evening and welcome to this special episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. We're going to take just a few minutes to talk about the Halloween movie universe. You could say the Halloween movie multiverse, which we will talk about more in a second. Now, if you are new to the Halloween franchise, or if you're just a casual horror fan and you're just not that familiar with the details of it, it can be a little bit daunting at first. There are a total of 13 films in the Halloween movie universe, 10 of which are either directly or indirectly related to the original film from 1978, plus 2 remakes that I suggest you avoid, plus 1 standalone film that is in a different timeline continuity altogether that I recommend you watch with an open mind. So, can be a little bit intimidating if you're new to it, but it's actually not that complicated. Let's take just a minute to walk through the history of these films and give you an idea of what's what. So in 1978, an independent film comes out called Halloween. It takes a little bit of time to get going, but ultimately becomes one of the most successful independent films of all time. It deserves everything good that has ever been said about it. It is a fantastic film. And of course, once that is done, it led to a lot of pressure to do a sequel. So, Halloween, the original film, tells the story of Michael Myers, who at the age of 6, for a reason that is never understood by anyone, takes a kitchen knife and stabs his 17-year-old sister to death and then spends the rest of his life in a mental institution. At least until he escapes on Halloween night, 15 years later, and resumes his carnage, stabbing and killing a group of babysitters. Halloween 2 came out a few years later and picks up immediately after the events of Halloween. It is literally the same night that the film Halloween takes place. So Halloween and Halloween 2 are effectively one giant long movie that's about 3.5 hours long. Halloween 2, also a very good sequel. After Halloween 2 is where things start to get confusing. At this point, you have to understand that the creators of Halloween, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, never intended for it to be a franchise of films about Michael Myers. What they intended for it to be was a series of an anthology series, a series of unrelated films, each one released a different year on Halloween, each one about a different subgenre of horror. So one year you might have sci-fi horror, one year you might have slasher serial killer horror, one year you might have something supernatural, and so on and so on and so on. So that is why in 1982 we got a film called Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, that had absolutely nothing to do with the first two. Because John Carpenter and Deborah Hill were of the mindset that, okay, we made our film Halloween, we didn't necessarily want to do a sequel, but we relented and made a sequel. At the end of the sequel, we think we tied up everything, so that is complete now. We're moving on to something else. Unfortunately, it was not successful with the public, who did not understand that. Now, it's too bad, because Halloween 3 is a pretty good sci-fi horror film, and it has been unjustly maligned. Because at that point, it was decided that no, the next films need to feature Michael Myers. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill did not want to do films with Michael Myers, and ultimately it led to John Carpenter and Deborah Hill selling their rights to the Halloween franchise to investor Mustafa Akkad, which leads 10 years after the original to Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Actually a pretty good sequel that takes place 10 years after Halloween 2. And then we got Halloween 5, which takes place a year after Halloween 4, which was not quite as good as Halloween 4. Not terrible, but not a great film. And then a few years later, we got Halloween 6, which I guess we could politely say was ambitious and creative. Unfortunately, it was also very poorly edited and poorly rewritten and rushed, and it just felt like it was thrown together and did not make a whole lot of sense, which is too bad because there was a good concept behind the film going in. It just did not make its way onto the screen. And so at that point, the series was creatively exhausted, plus star Donald Pleasence had passed away, so that was pretty much the end of the Halloween universe. Until 1998, 20 years after the original film. Now at this point, they can't do another sequel to Halloween 6. Donald Pleasence, who played Dr. Loomis, has passed away. Jamie Lee Curtis is no longer involved in the films. They killed her off years before. So what do? Well, they create a new branch on the timeline. So from Halloween 2, they lead directly into a new film called Halloween H20, 20 years later. So they assume that the sequels 4, 5, and 6 never happened in this particular timeline. We go from the original film to Halloween 2 to Halloween H20, which tells the story of Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, living in California 20 years later, having changed her name, changed her identity, and now posing as the headmistress of a private school when Michael Myers tracks down where she is. Pretty good movie in my opinion, which led to a not pretty good movie following it up called Halloween Resurrection. Halloween Resurrection by most people is considered the weakest of the non-Rob Zombie films in the Halloween franchise. And at that point, the series once again came to a crashing halt because Halloween Resurrection just was not good. And then somebody got a terrible idea. Somebody got an idea of, let's just reboot the series, and bonus, we'll hand creative control of the reboot over to Rob Zombie. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you ended up with Rob Zombie's Halloween, which is an abomination and an atrocity. And I do not recommend that you watch. It is graphically violent, but otherwise mangles the legend of Halloween entirely and just completely ruins it and turns Michael Myers from a mythical force of nature into an emo kid with emotional issues who grew up in an abusive household. It's just really, really terrible if you're a fan of the original. And of course, they could not stop themselves. They had to do a sequel to that, which somehow managed to be even worse. So Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 somehow managed to be even worse than Rob Zombie's Halloween, which was a train wreck. So I recommend that you avoid both of those films, and at that point, things came to a crashing halt once again. Which is good, because I have read where they were going. If they were doing a third film in that series, they were going to make a found footage Halloween film for Halloween 3 in that series if it had ever happened. So let's all be thankful that it did not happen. So that brings us to the year 2018, 40 years later, where in celebration we create another branch off of the timeline. This one coming directly from the original Halloween, this film called Halloween 2018. So this film just picks up directly after the original, does not even consider Halloween 2 in its continuity, which means Jamie Lee Curtis is not Michael Myers' brother in this continuity. She's just a babysitter that he was stalking on Halloween night. 2 years later, because of the coronavirus pandemic, that led into a film called Halloween Kills, which was of mixed reaction amongst the Halloween fans. Most Halloween fans really liked Halloween 2018. It was kind of a more mixed reaction to Halloween Kills. Personally, I liked it, and personally, I think it is very difficult to assess the quality of the second film in a trilogy when the third film has not yet come out. Now, as I am recording this, the third film in the series, called Halloween Ends, has not come out yet. Now, after this airs, Halloween Ends will have just hit theaters, so I don't have any idea now of what Halloween Ends is going to look like, but it should be in theaters by the time this episode of my show airs. So that will bring this episode to a conclusion. So there you go, 13 movies in the Halloween cinematic universe, and that is our special feature for this evening.
Yeah, the one you're picking up. Just thinking about him gives me the willies.
Well, tonight we're going to do something better. We're going to go trick-or-treating.
You're hunting it, ain't you?
He's gone. He was here, but he's gone.
Yeah, a decade ago, Halloween night, he murdered 16 people, maybe more.
It was Michael Myers.
But his doctor, of all people, shot him 6 times.
You're talking about him as if he were a human being.
It's Halloween. I mean, don't you want to get dressed up in a really scary costume and get some candy?
Don't try that Halloween shit with me.
You can reach me through the local police. If you don't find him in 4 hours, I'm sure I will.
Apocalypse, end of the world, Armageddon. It's always got a face and a name.
Yeah, I'll be glad to see this one gone. Yes, indeedy.
Okay, let's get into our featured film review for the evening. We are going to talk about the film Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. They made it a point to put Michael Myers' name in the title of this film because if you paid attention earlier, you know that the film Halloween 3 was a standalone film that takes place in a different universe that did not feature Michael Myers. Good film, but a lot of intellectual lightweights were confused by the fact that there was no Michael Myers. So the name Michael Myers was very prominently placed in the title of this film as a sop to the intellectual lightweights. This is of the slasher serial killer genre. Released in the year 1988, this film was directed by Dwight H. Little, and the cast includes Donald Pleasance as Dr. Samuel Loomis, Ellie Cornell, and in her film debut, the legendary scream queen Danielle Harris. She was like 8 or 9 years old when she made this film. So let's get into setting your expectations for this film. If you're going to sit down to watch Halloween 4, what you should expect is a conventional follow-up to Halloween and Halloween 2 that establishes the basic formula for the next few films. Now, if you like the original Halloween or Halloween 2, you should like Halloween 4. If you like the Friday the 13th series, you'll probably like Halloween 4. If you like the Scream series, there's a good chance you'll like Halloween 4. Halloween 4 is a pretty conventional slasher movie, so if you like any of the other pretty conventional slasher films, it's a good chance you'll like this one as well. Let's get into calibrating your expectations for this film. This is the scale we like to use. On the far left side of the scale, we have very campy films, such as Jason X. On the far right side of the scale, we have very serious films, such as The Silence of the Lambs. As always, this scale is not an indicator of the quality of the film. It is an indicator of what your mindset needs to be going into the film in order to maximize your enjoyment. Halloween 4 was a mainstream theatrical release. It was a horror movie, but it was kind of a popcorn horror movie, so it is more or less right down the middle of the scale. So before we go any farther, we need to get into our vocabulary lesson for this film. Our vocabulary lesson, of course, is the part of the episode where we discuss new and innovative words and phrases in an effort to stay ahead of social media bots and algorithms that would otherwise try to ban our conversation. 2 terms tonight, 1 new term, 1 review term. Let's start with the new term. Our new term for this evening is thumbtacking. Thumbtacking is a noun that refers to the action in a horror movie of a villain driving his thumb through a character's peeper, or in the case of very strong villains, such as Michael Myers, driving his thumb through a character's noggin. Our second term for this evening is a review term. We're going to review the term cash drawing. Cash drawing is a noun that refers to the act whereby the monster under your bed reaches out, grabs you by the ankles, and suddenly pulls you under the bed, usually while you scream and vainly claw at the floor. Please keep these 2 terms in mind. They will become important later in the episode. So let's get into a summary of this film. Since the events of Halloween 2, Michael Myers has been in a coma for 10 years in a psychiatric hospital. At the end of Halloween 2, Michael had been shot multiple times and was then burned severely in a fire. You assumed that he'd been burned to death at the end of Halloween 2. You find out that he did survive in this film, but has been in a coma ever since. While being transferred to another facility, Michael wakes up, of course, and kills the ambulance crew and then disappears. Dr. Samuel Loomis, Michael's doctor is convinced that Michael is heading back to Haddonfield to kill his young niece. His young niece being the daughter of the now deceased Laurie Strode. Yes, they killed off Laurie Strode. Jamie Lee Curtis did not appear in Halloween 4. And in order to keep the continuity going, they just decided that, well, we'll say that Laurie got married at a young age, had a daughter, but she and her husband recently died in a car accident, and her daughter is now staying with a foster family. Michael leaves a trail of victims as he carves a bloody path to Haddonfield with Dr. Loomis in hot pursuit, and that pretty much sums up the film. And of course, this film is all about our villain, Michael Myers. There you see Michael Myers right there in his iconic mask. Michael Myers is of the slasher serial killer class. His special powers are, well, his special power is that Michael is the boogeyman. He is immensely strong. He is immensely resistant to damage. But he is also very stealthy. And bonus, he lacks anything resembling emotions or a conscience or any semblance of humanity. Now, as far as signature weapon and techniques go, Michael likes ambush attacks featuring numerous bladed or pointy weapons, but he prefers a large kitchen knife. He does occasionally use his bare hands. So let's get into some of the things I liked about this film right off the bat. The film features a chase across Illinois back to Haddonfield with Michael killing along the way, rather than just Michael skulking around the town of Haddonfield for 90 minutes. So from that perspective, this is different from the other films. The kills are interesting. The cast is likable. It is interesting to compare law enforcement's reaction now, which is to fall in line with Loomis's demands immediately, to their skepticism the first time out. So in the first film, law enforcement kind of rolled their eyes at Dr. Loomis and said, yeah, Michael Myers, whatever. In this film, 10 years after his rampage, they know exactly who he is. They know exactly what he is capable of. When Dr. Loomis shows up and says he's loose, they fall to attention and follow his instructions. We see how the people of Haddonfield react to the news that Michael is back as well. They are not happy about it. The film is well-paced and competently made. It does not feel cheap or poorly edited. Some of the latter sequels in this continuity felt kind of poorly edited. This one feels like a pretty tight package, though. And finally, Halloween 4 does feature a great final twist. The first time I watched this film, I did not see it coming. Now, they did kind of chicken out on that final twist in later films, but Halloween 4, viewed in a vacuum, has a great final twist at the end. Now, things that could have been better about this film, well, it's very derivative of its predecessors. Now, we have talked about this a number of times on this show, that horror films in general are very formulaic. Slasher films, very formulaic. Halloween 4, obviously, is going to be very derivative of its predecessors, Halloween and Halloween 2. There's just no way around it. It's no more derivative of its predecessors than the Friday the 13th series or the Scream series or anything else, but it's no more innovative either. At some point, Michael's superhuman abilities are a little hard to swallow, such as his ability to first survive the fire from Halloween 2, and then emerge from a 10-year coma at full strength. Now, I guess it depends upon how you look at this. They never really tell you what Michael's powers are or why Michael does what he does. We don't understand his motivation. We don't understand who or what he is beyond having seen him as a 6-year-old boy. Many believe that Michael has some sort of supernatural aspect to him, and if you accept that, then it becomes easier to accept that he is supernaturally durable. Of course, having a supernatural aspect is not the most realistic thing in the world, but it is not any less realistic than Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger. So from that point of view, it's no harder to swallow than any of the other slasher films of the time. Many of the supporting actors and actresses are mediocre to subpar. Not the main cast, but the supporting cast. This film features a little too much teenage soap opera drama for my taste. Now, I am well past my teenage years, so I am less tolerant of this kind of drama than I used to be. The target audience for this film is obviously people in their teens and 20s, so they might be more accepting of the teenage soap opera drama. For me, I could have done without it. And finally, the cast of characters includes Lindsay Wallace and Tommy Doyle, which is a plus. but their roles are just cameos, so they weren't really utilized in this film. And also, both of them were recast with a different actor and a different actress. But their appearance is kind of window dressing. They're just in one scene so they can say, hey, look, it's Lindsay Wallace, and hey, look, it's Tommy Doyle, but they play no part in the film, which is kind of disappointing. And now a word from our benevolent overlords at PBDC TV, your nightly heartbeat of horror.
Hello, all you beautiful people. It's your boy, Slippy. And when I'm not gouging my face down in gallons and gallons of ice cream, I'm watching PBDC TV. Yes, the most amazing TV show out there. Now keep on watching. I love y'all. Mwah! Stay nasty.
Well, gentlemen, perhaps we wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't said to ourselves, just go, 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 go for it.
Final score for this film, we're going to give it 3 paws out of 4.
La Señora de la Santa Muerte, Spanish for Our Lady of the Holy Death.
Out now!
Oh, sex and violence!
Hi everybody, I'm Akaw.
And I'm Pre-Sexist Diamond.
And we are Roots Bleed Red on Psycho Bunny Death Cult.
Aha!
In fact, humans have a very long history of eating each other.
So lock your doors, turn out your lights, and join us for Ghoul Radio.
This is Professor Edgar Fluffosaurus from Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, and when I'm not hosting Monster Chat or knocking down small Japanese cities, I'm watching PBDC TV. Now back to the show.
So let's get to Steve's scorecard for this film. Right off the bat, let's start with the kill count. Kills. I counted 16, including dogs, plus many more that occur off-screen during a mass casualty event. Mass casualty events? Well, there is one occurring at the police station, and it occurs off-screen, so it is hard to get a good kill count from that. Bare breasts. Oh, it's a Halloween film. There's got to be bare breasts, right? Yes, there are 2. Kathleen McKinnon. Possumings, you get 1. Cash drawings, you get 1. Thumbtackings, you get 1. Stud detectings, you get 1. And finally, executive overreaches. Yes, there is 1 incident of extreme police overkill in this film. But with any Halloween film, you're going to get a number of bonus features. Let's talk about what some of those might be. Well, right off the bat, you have Danielle Harris's film debut. Now, I like Danielle Harris. I know some horror fans roll their eyes at Danielle Harris. Your mileage may vary. But one way or the other, she is an established scream queen, and this was her film debut. She was, like I said, 8 or 9 years old when she made this film, and she more or less was the lead character in this film despite being so young. You get yet another patient transfer at Halloween. Why, oh why, do they keep transferring Michael Myers at Halloween? It would be nice if they just wrote a one-liner into the script to kind of explain why it is they continually do these transfers at Halloween. Maybe they could say, oh, it's the end of the fiscal year, so we have to do the transfer now. Or, oh, the fiscal year just started, so we have to do the transfer now. Just throw something out there just to acknowledge the fact that, yes, you are transferring a patient notorious for having gone nuts on Halloween night on Halloween night. Loomis still refers to Michael as it and not him. Dr. Loomis has long since stopped thinking of Michael Myers as human, and he refers to Michael as it. You get a Lindsay Wallace sighting, and bonus, you also get a Tommy Doyle sighting. But as I said earlier, they're kind of wasted. They're just cameo appearances, so you can say, hey, look, it's Lindsay Wallace. Plus, both of them were recast. It was kind of disappointing to have both of them in the film, but both of them not play any kind of significant role. You get a metaphor-y old pastor in a truck sighting. Yes, Dr. Loomis, while hitchhiking, is picked up by an old pastor in a truck who is a metaphor for hunting Armageddon. You get Rachel Carruthers, the world's worst babysitter. Yes, Rachel Carruthers completely loses track of her charge, Jamie Lloyd, while they are out trick-or-treating, making her the world's worst babysitter. You get the redneck militia to the rescue. Yes, as we said, the townspeople are not happy with Michael's return, and they do form a redneck militia to go and welcome him. You get deep-fried Bucky. You get another sheriff, another dead sheriff's daughter. It's the Halloween tradition. The sheriff's daughter is murdered by Michael Myers, and the sheriff goes the rest of the film having no idea that his daughter is already dead. And of course, having killed off his daughter, you get into a problem. So, Rachel, are you going to mention to the sheriff that his daughter is dead? Now, it has been several weeks between me watching the film and putting these notes together and actually recording the voiceover because I had other things I had to do for the show. So, maybe my memory is a little foggy here, but it certainly seems like Rachel is aware that the sheriff's daughter is dead, and yet they are together in a later scene in the film, and she doesn't mention it to him. Now, I'm not going to assume that the sheriff is so stoic that he just goes on knowing that his daughter is dead, so I'm not going to assume that Rachel mentioned it to him off screen and that he already knows. I'm going to assume he still does not know, which brings us back to the fact that Rachel, you knew that his daughter was dead, and you just said nothing about it to him. Boo, Rachel. So, Steve's final score for this film, we're going to give it 3 paws out of 4. We're going to say this is one of the better films of the initial Halloween timeline continuity. This film plus Halloween 1 and 2, probably the best of the initial timeline. It is conventional, but it is competently made, it is well-paced, and it is ultimately entertaining. So I recommend this film. I give it 3 paws out of 4. I enjoy this film a lot. I make it a point to watch it every Halloween season. And that is our featured film review for the evening.
I prayed that he would burn in hell.
Well, he'll stay till the day he dies.
Never die.
But in my heart, I knew that hell would not have him.
Today in the cemetery, somebody dug up a coffin. It was a coffin of a 9-year-old girl. What do you think he's going to do with that?
Let's talk about our second featured film review for the evening. We are going to talk about this film. It is called Halloween 5, The Return of Michael Myers. Yet again, putting Michael Myers' name in the title of the film for those who were confused by Halloween 3. This is of the slasher serial killer genre. It was released in the year 1989, so released only a year after Halloween 4. Directed by, and I'm going to mispronounce this, but I'm going to try anyway, Dominique Othenin-Girard. And the cast includes, once again, Donald Pleasance, once again, Danielle Harris, once again, Ellie Cornell, plus Bo Starr and Wendy Kaplan. Let's get into setting your expectations for this film. If you're going to sit down and watch Halloween 5, what you should expect is a very run-of-the-mill, borderline uninspired slasher film that could have expanded the Halloween mythology, but most of that was edited out. So if you like Halloween, you might like this film. If you like Friday the 13th, you might like this film. If you like Scream, you might like this film. This film definitely not as strong as Halloween 4. But if you like any of those series, you'll probably be willing to give this one a chance. Now, let's get into calibrating your sights for this film. This is the scale we like to use. On the far left side of the scale, we have very campy films, such as Jason X. On the far right side of the scale, we have very serious films, such as The Silence of the Lambs. As always, this scale is not an indicator of the quality of the film. It's an indicator of what your mindset needs to be going into the film. Halloween 5 is a little bit from the middle of the scale to the left, just because there is some explicit comic relief in this film. Otherwise, it is a typical mainstream horror movie, popcorn movie type film. So more or less straight down the middle, except the comic relief in a couple of scenes pulls it to the left. Now, before we go any farther, we need to do a vocabulary lesson. This, once again, is the part of the show where we discuss new and innovative words and phrases in an effort to stay ahead of social media bots and algorithms that would otherwise try to ban our conversation. We're going to do 2 review terms for this film. First term is fonduing. Fonduing is a noun referring to the action of sticking a character on the end of a long fork. Colloquial forms of this include frog-gigging and kermiting. Our second term for this evening is bayonet coronation from earlier this season. Bayonet coronation is a noun referring to the action in a horror movie of driving a knife through the top of another character's noggin. Please keep these terms in mind. They will become important later in the episode. So let's get into a summary of this film. First of all, you need to understand this film opens with a recap of Halloween 4. They replay a lot of the footage from Halloween 4 at the start of this film to kind of ground you in what happened leading into it. But what we see is that at the end of Halloween 4, Michael escaped by crawling through a passage to a river and then floated downstream. Michael, of course, had fallen down a well at the end of Halloween 4 after being shot multiple times. So we determined that instead of being blown up when they threw explosives down there, he was able to crawl his way out. A kindly hermit finds Michael, not knowing who he is or what he is, takes him in and nurses him back to health. And of course, the kindly hermit is rewarded for his efforts, because a year later, Michael emerges from catatonia. He dons his mask and he resumes his hunt for his niece Jamie, and the first thing he does, of course, is to off the kindly hermit who has taken care of him. So let's talk about the things I liked about this film. Right off the bat, I need to say this. Although this is not the strongest entry in the Halloween franchise, it is not as bad as some make it out to be. There are worse films in the Halloween franchise than Halloween 5. Halloween 5, certainly not the strongest entry in the series, but certainly not the worst either. And with that said, things I liked, Loomis's obsession with Michael has become maniacal, to the point that he has no issue abusing a little girl in order to find Michael. It is kind of frightening how far over the edge Loomis has been driven by his obsession with Michael Myers. The kills in this film, once again, are not over the top or exaggerated. The Curse of Thorn subplot, which they introduced in this film, is an interesting idea, and it could have been a very interesting development in the Halloween franchise, especially for this first timeline, but they kind of chickened out of it long term. Finally, whatever you think of this film, you got to keep in mind it is a Halloween film. I love Halloween films. I even love the bad ones. I don't consider this one a bad one, but I don't consider this one a great one either. But every Halloween season, I definitely sit down to watch this film at least once, just because it is a Halloween film. I love the franchise, and I do love all the films. Of course, this film is not without flaw. There are some things that could have been better. So let's talk about those right off the bat. As I said before, this is definitely not one of the better entries in the Halloween franchise. It is poorly edited and it feels rushed. And the reason it feels poorly edited and rushed is because it was poorly edited and rushed. You notice that this film came out a year after Halloween 4. It is kind of tough to throw a movie together and do it that quickly if you weren't already planning to do it. So it feels edited and poorly edited and rushed because it was. Most of the Curse of Thorn subplot, which I mentioned a moment ago, was edited out of the film, which makes the final cut of the film confusing and draws attention to the poor editing. It could have been really interesting, but they decided at the last minute, yeah, that's a little too complicated, we're going to edit that out. And all they succeeded in doing was make the movie confusing and draw attention to the fact that, yeah, this was kind of a haphazardly edited film. The cast is bland and predictable, kind of par for the course for this caliber of film. The kills are not particularly inspired, and given the fact that this is the first Halloween night since Halloween 4 took place, most of the town seems remarkably nonchalant or unaffected by earlier events. So now you've had 2 Halloweens in the span of 10 years where multiple murders took place, 16 murders the first time around, I believe 16 the second time around, and yet people don't seem to be that worked up over Halloween night the next year. Finally, there is a scene where Michael removes his mask in this film, and it is awful. There's just no defending it. It is awful. So let's get to Steve's scorecard for this film. Kills, I counted 12, plus there are more from an off-screen mass casualty event. Bare breasts, oh, not quite. I've given it an asterisk. You get a view of Ellie Cornell through the shower curtain, or more likely you get a view of Ellie Cornell's body double through the shower curtain. But it's through a shower curtain. You don't really get a great view of anything. Mass casualty events, you have 1, and it does occur off screen. Fonduings, you have 1. Bayonet coronations, once again you have 1. Possumings, you have multiple near misses but no possumings in this film. Douche nozzle boyfriends, oh lord yes, there is one of those. Tina's boyfriend is a douche nozzle of the nth degree. And finally, infauchinations, referring to the time when somebody in a lab coat, or in this case a scientist in a trench coat, takes control of the entirety of the executive branch of government without anyone actually giving him that authority. It is continual. Dr. Loomis is continually in charge of everything going on in Haddonfield, despite the fact that no one has actually voted to put him in charge of anything. Of course, with your viewing of Halloween 5, you get some bonus features. Let's talk about those. Right off the bat, you get chickening out from its own story twist. I mentioned earlier that Halloween 4 had a very interesting twist at the end of the story, then Halloween 5 chickened out. You get a kindly pirate hermit guy and his bird. Yes, you get a kindly pirate hermit guy. I don't really have a backstory on him, not sure who he is or how he ended up where he is or where he got his bird, but he does play a role in the beginning of the film. What exactly is the relationship between Jamie and Tina anyway? Jamie seems to be more attached to Tina than she is to her foster sister Rachel, and it's never really explained how they know each other or why, other than the fact that Tina is one of Rachel's friends. You get death threat action, and death threat action to a little girl, no less. Quick! Someone please explain the difference between stepmother and foster mother to the screenwriter. They continually refer to Jamie's foster mother as her stepmother in this film, despite the fact that she is not the stepmother, she is the foster mother. Jamie's parents are both dead. She was not married to Jamie's father. She has taken in Jamie as a foster child. She is the foster mother. Rachel is Jamie's foster sister, not stepsister. You get Michael Myers' first kiss in this film, so from that point of view, it's a milestone. Why is Tina dating such a douche nozzle? I don't know. Now, a lot of people don't like the character of Tina either. They find her kind of flighty and annoying. She is flighty. I know the type. She's not as annoying as they make her out to be, but certainly a strong cup of coffee. You get giant tit cookie action. You get exploding Camaros. You get, finally, Tina never giving Max his water. Yes, Max the dog is told to chill out and Tina will give him some water. She never does. So let's get to Steve's final score for this film. I'm going to give this one 2 paws out of 4. This is one of the weaker entries into the Halloween franchise, though not the worst in my opinion. It is conventional, it is uninventive, it is uninspired, and it seems to drag on for too long and yet feel rushed at the same time. So, for the sake of completeness, if you're a Halloween fan, you need to watch this film. And like I said, it's not a bad film, especially if you just like 80s slasher films, but definitely not one of the stronger films in the series. It's a derivative of the previous ones, but not edited as well, and like I said, seems to drag on for too long and yet feel poorly edited and thrown together at the same time. So, that is our featured film review for Halloween 5. Thank you for listening. That brings us to the end of this special spooky season episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a lot of fun putting this episode together, and we hope you enjoyed it as well. Of course, we always love to hear from you, so feel free to sound off in the comments about your favorite moments from the Halloween film franchise, or your favorite horror franchise other than Halloween, or anything else that comes to mind. As always, if you did enjoy the show, please give us a like and a share. The best thing you can do to help us out is to share this video. If you want to stay up to speed on our latest videos and other goings-on, you can follow us and subscribe on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat is available exclusively through PBDC TV, your nightly heartbeat of horror. So if you're interested in horror movies, true crime, creepy history, or unexplained events, we're sure to have a show for you. You can find us at PsychoBunnyDC.com, and we're also on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Rumble. We also have a 100% Zuckerberg-free Discord site. If you would like to check it out, just head on over to PsychoBunnyDC.com and click the link for an invitation. Next week is Halloween. Yes, Halloween. And we're doing something a little different next week. On next week's show, we'll be talking about my favorite moments from some of my favorite horror movies. It's going to be a lot of fun, so we hope to see you then. In the meantime, everyone have a great week and stay safe. We'll see you again soon. Good night, everybody.